The war had been going on for 107 years. The Valkene Empire and the Thornid Collective had turned 12 star systems into graveyards. Billions had died. Entire planets had been cracked open like eggs. Nobody remembered why the war started anymore. They only knew how to keep fighting. Commander Daewon stood on the bridge of his ship, the Morning Star, and watched the two massive fleets position themselves for another battle. His tactical officer, Hana, sat at her station with her fingers moving across the holographic display. She was calculating something that no alien military mind had ever considered before. 2.3 million Valkene soldiers on the left, Hana said quietly. 2.1 million Thornid on the right. They're preparing for a standard engagement pattern. Daewon nodded. He was a calm man, the kind who spoke softly and thought carefully. The other 11 human ships floated in formation behind his flagship. 12 ships. 40,000 human soldiers total, against over 4 million alien warriors. The galaxy was watching. Every major civilization had tuned in to see what humanity would do. Earth had only achieved faster-than-light travel 8 months ago. They were the newcomers, the primitives, the species that barely understood the technology they were using. When the Galactic Council had approached humanity with a contract to resolve the conflict in the contested zone, most species laughed. Some felt pity. Humans were going to be slaughtered, and everyone knew it. Incoming transmission from the Valkene flagship, the communications officer announced. Put it through, Daewon said. The face of Supreme Commander Threx appeared on the main screen. He was a towering creature, easily 3 meters tall with 4 arms and armor that gleamed like polished obsidian. His species had conquered 47 worlds before meeting the Thornids. He looked at Daewon with what might have been amusement. So the Galactic Council sends children to do their work now, Threx said. His voice sounded like grinding metal. Your ships are tiny. Your numbers are pathetic. I will give you one chance to flee before I turn you into dust. Daewon clasped his hands behind his back. We appreciate your concern, Commander Threx. However, we have a contract to fulfill. Threx laughed. It was a horrible sound. Then you will die fulfilling it. The Valkene Empire shows no mercy to those who stand between us and victory. The transmission ended. Hana looked up from her console. The Thornid coordinator hasn't even bothered to contact us. Their scans show they don't consider us a threat worth acknowledging. Good, Daewon said. Let them underestimate us. Status of the silence array. Fully charged and ready, Hana replied. All 12 ships are synchronized. We can activate on your command. Young Captain Wren entered the bridge. He commanded the human marine forces. 500 soldiers on each ship. He was barely 30 years old, but he had seen combat on Earth during the last of the water wars. His face was scarred, his eyes tired. The troops are ready, sir, Wren reported. They're scared, but they're ready. They should be scared, Daewon said, not unkindly. We're about to do something that's never been done before. Something the galaxy will remember forever. The Valkene fleet began moving forward. Massive battleships that could level cities with a single volley. Behind them came carriers packed with fighter craft and dropships. The Thornid fleet responded, their organic-looking vessels rippling with biological weapons. On Earth, in the military command center, generals watched with pale faces. On dozens of alien worlds, civilians gathered around screens waiting to see humanity's end. In the Galactic Council chamber, ambassadors whispered to each other, already drafting statements of condolence. They're entering weapons range, Hana announced. Activate the silence array, Daewon ordered. 12 human ships hummed with power, but there were no visible weapons. No missiles launched, no energy beams fired. Instead, something invisible spread out from the human vessels like ripples in a pond. It moved faster than light, faster than thought, touching every single ship in both alien fleets. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, on the Valkene flagship, Supreme Commander Threx staggered. His 4 arms went to his head. Around him, officers collapsed at their stations. Not dead, not injured, simply unable to function. In the Thornid command vessel, War Coordinator Quillar experienced something her species had never felt before. Pure, overwhelming memory. She saw her homeworld. She saw the face of her offspring, whom she hadn't seen in 40 years. She saw the graves of soldiers under her command. Thousands of graves. Tens of thousands. All those deaths. All that loss. And for what? The question echoed in her mind like thunder. For what? For what? For what? She couldn't answer. The answer had been lost decades ago, buried under layers of propaganda and duty and honor. Without an answer, she couldn't give orders. Without orders, she couldn't fight. Across both fleets, the same thing happened to millions of soldiers. Each one received something different. Valkeen warriors saw visions of peace, of returning home, of children they'd never met growing up without them. Thornid fighters felt emotions that had been suppressed by military conditioning. Fear, doubt, exhaustion, grief. Some soldiers wept. Others sat in silence, staring at nothing. Many simply closed their eyes and surrendered to the overwhelming realization that they didn't want to fight anymore. They didn't want to kill. They didn't want to die. They wanted to go home. Within 5 minutes, both fleets were completely silent. Not destroyed. Not damaged, just silent. On the bridge of the Morning Star, Daewon watched the scan results with satisfaction. All vessels are drifting. No weapons activity, no communications. No resistance. Hana leaned back in her chair, exhausted. Creating the psychological profiles for over 4 million individuals had taken months of work. The artificial intelligence systems had crafted a unique message for each soldier, targeting their specific fears, hopes, and vulnerabilities. It was the most complex psychological operation in human history. Are they okay? Captain Wren asked quietly. They're alive and physically healthy, Hana answered. Mentally, they're experiencing shock, confusion, and in most cases, the first clear thoughts they've had in years. The military propaganda that kept them fighting has been stripped away. Now they're just people who don't want to be here anymore. Deploy the medical and counseling teams, Daewon ordered. Begin docking procedures with all vessels. We need to stabilize them before the psychological effects become permanent trauma. Across the galaxy, observers watched in stunned silence. The battle that should have lasted hours and cost thousands of lives had ended in minutes with 0 casualties. 2 of the most powerful military forces in the known universe had simply stopped fighting. On Earth, people celebrated in the streets. Humanity had survived. More than survived. They had won. But in the Galactic Council chamber, ambassadors looked at each other with a new emotion. Not relief. Not gratitude, fear. Because they were beginning to understand what humanity had done. And if humans could do this to millions of soldiers in a war zone, what could they do to anyone else? Daewon sent a simple message to the Galactic Council. His voice was calm, professional, almost boring. Contested zone secured. Both fleets are under human protection. We are beginning humanitarian operations. As per our contract, we are claiming salvage rights to all vessels and requesting immediate payment for services rendered. He closed the transmission and turned to Hana. How long until the other species figure out what we actually did? Hours, maybe days, she replied. And when they do, everything changes. Daewon looked out at the silent fleets drifting in the darkness of space. Millions of soldiers who had entered this battlefield ready to kill and die. Now they would leave it alive, confused, and forever changed. Yes, he said quietly, everything changes. The Galactic Council chamber erupted in chaos. Ambassadors from 70 different species shouted over each other, demanding explanations. Some accused humanity of using forbidden weapons. Others insisted the humans must have destroyed the armies and were covering it up. A few sat in terrified silence, already understanding the implications. Ambassador Krell, the council representative who had signed the contract with humanity, felt sick. He was a veteran diplomat, someone who had negotiated treaties for over 60 years. He prided himself on reading every detail, finding every loophole. But the humans had written their contract in such simple language that he had dismissed it as primitive. Now he saw the trap. The contract said humans would resolve the conflict and could claim salvage rights to all materials used in the resolution. He thought that meant any weapons or ships destroyed in battle. He never imagined it meant everything. Both entire fleets. Billions of credits worth of military hardware, all legally belonging to humanity now. They tricked us, one ambassador hissed. No, Krell said quietly. We tricked ourselves. We saw newcomers and assumed they were fools. Meanwhile, Intelligence Officer Bora sat in a small office aboard the Morning Star, watching reports flood in from across the galaxy. She was younger than most of her colleagues, barely 28, but she had 3 degrees in xenopsychology. She had spent 2 years studying every known alien species, learning how they thought, what they feared, what motivated them. The silence array had been her idea. Her assistant Jin entered the room. He was a special operations leader, the kind of soldier who worked in shadows and never spoke about his missions. But even he looked shaken. "The medical teams are reporting back," Jin said. "The alien soldiers are responsive but non-communicative. They're not catatonic. They're just choosing not to engage. Some are crying. Many are sleeping. A few have asked to send messages home." "Expected behavior," Bora replied, making notes. "The psychological shock will last another 48 to 72 hours. After that, they'll start asking questions. And when their governments come asking questions," Jin said, "when they realize we didn't kill their armies but did something worse?" Bora looked up at him. "Worse? We left them alive. We broke their minds. We freed their minds." Bora corrected. "There's a difference." Before Jin could respond, alarms sounded throughout the ship. A massive fleet had just entered the system. Vulcan reinforcements. Over 500 ships. On the bridge, Commander Daewon studied the incoming fleet with no visible emotion. "How many soldiers?" 8 million, Hana reported. Led by Fleet Marshal Vex. He's the Valkene Empire's highest-ranking military commander. "He wants his armies back," Captain Ren said. "Then we should talk to him," Daewon replied calmly. "Open a channel." Fleet Marshal Vex appeared on the screen. He was even larger than Threx, his armor covered in medals representing hundreds of victories. His face was a mask of barely controlled rage. "You will return our soldiers immediately," Vex demanded. "You will surrender our ships, and then you will leave this system before I turn your homeworld into a smoking ruin." "I have a better idea," Daewon said. "Let's meet face to face. Neutral ground. Just you, me, and our senior staff. We can discuss this like civilized beings." Vex stared at him. "You dare negotiate? You have 12 ships. I have 500. I could destroy you in minutes." "You could try," Daewon agreed. "But then you'd never see your soldiers again. And you'd never know what we did to them." "Don't you want to know, Marshal? How 12 human ships defeated 2 armies without firing a single shot?" That question hung in the air. Finally, Vex nodded. 1 hour. "The neutral station in Sector 7. If this is a trick, human, I will make your species regret ever leaving their homeworld." The transmission ended. 60 minutes later, they met in a conference room on an old trading station. Fleet Marshal Vex brought 10 of his top officers, all heavily armed. Commander Daewon brought only 3 people, Hana, Bora, and Jin. No weapons. No armor, just 4 humans in simple uniforms. Vex looked at them with disgust. "Explain what you did to our warriors." Bora stepped forward. She looked tiny compared to the massive Valkene officers, but her voice was steady. "We used targeted psychological warfare. Each of your soldiers received a personalized neural broadcast designed to break through their military conditioning. You attacked their minds," one Valkene officer growled. "We showed them the truth," Bora replied. "Your soldiers have been fighting for over a century. Most don't remember why. They've been conditioned to obey orders without question, to see the enemy as less than living beings, to suppress their own emotions and desires. We simply removed that conditioning." "You brainwashed them," Vex said. "No," Bora said firmly. "Brainwashing is what your military did to them. We unbrainwashed them. We gave each soldier a personalized message that forced them to confront reality. Some saw memories of home. Others experienced the full weight of the deaths they'd caused. Many simply realized that they were fighting a war that no longer had any meaning." She pulled up holographic displays showing brain scans. "Their minds are completely intact. No damage, no alterations. They're just experiencing clarity for the first time in years. They're asking themselves questions like, why am I fighting? And what do I really want?" Without propaganda to give them answers, they chose to stop. "You made them weak," Vex spat. "We made them human," Hana interjected. "Or rather, we reminded them they were people. Your military training turned them into machines. We turned them back." Vex stood abruptly, his forearms clenching. "This is an abomination. You have violated the laws of war. You have committed a crime against what?" Jin interrupted. He was the only one who seemed unafraid of the huge alien. "Against the right to force people to kill and die for causes they don't understand? Against the right to turn living beings into weapons?" The room fell silent. Where are our soldiers now? Vex demanded. They're in our medical facilities, Day One answered, being treated for severe psychological trauma. Post-traumatic stress, depression, anxiety, all the mental wounds your military ignored or encouraged. We have human therapists working with them, helping them process what they've experienced. You're healing them? A Valkeen officer looked confused. Of course, Bora said. What did you think we'd do? We broke them. Now we have to fix them. That's the other half of our strategy. She brought up more displays showing the medical facilities, alien soldiers sitting in therapy sessions, others exercising, some eating together, Valkeen and Thornid side by side, talking quietly. Your enemies are eating together, Vex observed. They're realizing they're not really enemies, Hana replied. They're just soldiers who were told to hate each other. Remove the propaganda and they're just people who want to go home. Fleet Marshal Vex sat down slowly. For the first time, he looked less like a warrior and more like a tired old man. How long have you been planning this? Since we first learned about your war, Day One admitted. Humanity has fought countless wars. We've made every mistake possible. We've committed atrocities. We've lost billions to pointless conflicts, but we learned something your species haven't yet discovered. What? Vex asked quietly. Wars don't end when one side wins, Day One said. They end when both sides stop wanting to fight. You can conquer a planet, but you can't conquer a mind. Not permanently. We learned that the hard way. So instead of developing bigger weapons, we developed a way to end the desire for war itself. By taking away our warriors' will to fight, Vex said bitterly. By giving them back their will to choose, Bora corrected. Your soldiers didn't lose anything. They gained something. The freedom to say, I don't want this anymore. Jin pulled up footage from the medical facilities. A Valkeen soldier was writing a letter to his family. Another was teaching a Thornid how to play a human card game. Two former enemies were working together in the gardens, growing food. They seem happy, a Valkeen officer whispered. They're not being ordered to kill people they don't hate for reasons they don't understand, Hana said. Yes, they're happy. Fleet Marshal Vex stood up. He looked at the four humans for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, quieter. What do you want from us? To end this war, Day One said simply. Not by destroying the Valkeen Empire or the Thornid Collective. By helping both sides remember that soldiers are people, not weapons. By showing the galaxy that there's a better way. And if we refuse? Vex asked. If we attack you anyway? Day One looked him in the eye. Then 8 million more soldiers will stop fighting. And you'll have to explain to your government why you lost another army without a single battle. The threat hung in the air. Finally, Vex turned to leave. At the door, he paused. You humans are the most dangerous species I've ever encountered. Because we can defeat your armies? Hana asked. No, Vex replied. Because you might actually end war itself. And if you do, what will warriors like me become? He left without waiting for an answer. Bora looked at Day One. That went better than expected. Did it? Day One asked. We just showed the galaxy's most powerful military that we can make their soldiers refuse to fight. Every species with an army is going to see us as a threat now. Good, Jin said grimly. Let them fear peace for once. News traveled fast across the galaxy. Within days, every civilization knew what humanity had done. Some called it a miracle. Others called it an atrocity. Most simply called it terrifying. The debates raged on every world. Religious leaders argued about the morality of changing minds. Military commanders studied the implications for their own forces. Common citizens wondered if they were safe from humanity's reach. On Earth, protests erupted in major cities. Thousands of people marched with signs demanding that humanity stop using the silence array. They argued it was wrong to force people to change, even if it saved lives. Others counter-protested, saying that ending wars was worth any cost. In the contested zone inside the converted medical ships, something unexpected was happening. The soldiers weren't recovering. They were thriving. Psychologist So Jin walked through the facilities, observing with quiet satisfaction. She was 40 years old and had spent 15 years treating war veterans on Earth. She had seen soldiers broken by combat, haunted by memories, unable to return to normal life. But this was different. A Valkeen soldier named Kelvor sat in the common area, talking with a Thornid named Rin. 3 months ago, they would have killed each other on sight. Now they were discussing music. Kelvor had discovered he enjoyed the harmonic frequencies of Thornid singing. Rin found Valkeen percussion fascinating. "How are you feeling today?" Sojin asked in the Valkeen language. Kelvor looked up at her. "Strange," he admitted. "I remember being a soldier. I remember battles, orders, victories. But it feels like watching someone else's life. I don't feel like that person anymore." "Who do you feel like?" Sojin asked gently. "Myself," Kelvor said simply. "For the first time in 60 years, I feel like myself." Rin nodded in agreement. "The war told us who to be. The army told us what to think. Now nobody's telling us anything. We get to choose," so Jin smiled. This was the breakthrough. The soldiers weren't damaged. They were discovering who they really were beneath the military programming, but not everyone saw it that way. High Chancellor Zreen of the Thornid Collective watched the reports with growing fury. Her species had a culture built on honor, strength, and military tradition. The idea that Thornid soldiers were sitting around talking about feelings and making friends with enemies disgusted her. She called an emergency session of her war council. "This is unacceptable," she declared. "The humans have made us look weak. They've turned our warriors into cowards. We must respond with overwhelming force." Her generals agreed. Within weeks, they assembled a new army, 5 million fresh soldiers, none of whom had been touched by human psychological warfare. They were eager, confident, and ready to restore Thornid honor. The human fleet detected them coming. On the bridge of the Morning Star, Commander Daewon studied the approaching armada with concern. 5 million soldiers. They're not making the same mistake as last time. They know what we can do. Will the silence array work on them? Captain Wren asked. Hana ran calculations. Maybe, but they're mentally prepared for it. They've been warned about psychological warfare. They've been trained to resist. The effectiveness will be reduced by at least 60%, meaning we'll only incapacitate 3 million instead of 5, Wren said. Meaning 2 million soldiers will keep fighting, Hana corrected, and they'll be angry. Daewon considered this. The silence array worked best on soldiers already traumatized by war, already questioning their purpose. These were fresh troops still believing in their cause, still convinced they were fighting for something meaningful. We could still win, Jin said. He had arrived on the bridge with a tactical plan. Hit them with the array. Deal with the survivors conventionally. We have advantages they don't expect. No, Daewon said firmly. If we start killing them, we become what they fear. We prove that we're just another military power with a different weapon. Then what do we do? Wren demanded. Let them destroy us? Diplomat Yuna had been listening quietly. She was humanity's chief negotiator with the Galactic Council. A woman known for her patience and insight. She stepped forward with an idea. We don't fight them, Yuna said. We show them. Show them what? Hana asked. Everything, Yuna replied. We show them what happened to their fellow soldiers. Not through propaganda or manipulation, just the truth. 6 hours later, as the Thornid Armada approached, humanity began broadcasting across all frequencies. But it wasn't a weapon. It was footage. Video of Valkeen and Thornid soldiers in the medical facilities. Not looking defeated or broken, but calm and healthy. Soldiers writing letters home to families they hadn't contacted in years. Former enemies playing games together, eating meals, laughing. Then came the personal messages. Thousands of soldiers had volunteered to record videos for their fellow Thornid warriors still fighting. They spoke about their experiences, their realizations, their choice to stop fighting. One soldier, a Thornid commander who had fought for 40 years, looked directly into the camera. I know what you're thinking, he said. You think we're cowards? You think the humans broke us. But the war broke us. The humans just showed us the cracks. I'm not fighting anymore because I finally asked myself why I was fighting, and I couldn't find an answer. Can you? The broadcast went out for hours. No weapons, no threats, just testimony. On the Thornid flagship, High Chancellor Zreen watched with growing alarm as her soldiers began talking among themselves. Some dismissed the broadcast as propaganda, but others looked thoughtful, questioning. Turn off those transmissions, Zreen ordered. We've tried, Chancellor, her communications officer reported. The humans are broadcasting on every possible frequency. We'd have to shut down all communications entirely. Then do it. But it was too late. The seeds of doubt had been planted. Commander Nis, a senior Thornid officer, had been watching the broadcasts carefully. She was a veteran of 50 years. someone who had dedicated her entire life to military service. She had earned her rank through countless battles. Now she walked through her ship observing her soldiers. They were younger than her, most of them, eager and untested. She had been eager once too. She couldn't remember when that had changed. When fighting had stopped being about honor and become just habit. She made a decision that would change everything. Commander Nis opened a direct channel to High Chancellor Zreen. Chancellor, I must speak with you privately. What is it, Commander? Zreen demanded impatiently. I want to know why we're fighting, Nis said simply. The question seemed to shock Zreen. What? We're fighting to restore Thornid honor, to punish the humans for their interference. But why were we fighting before the humans arrived? Nis pressed. What started our war with the Valkeen? What are we actually trying to accomplish? Zreen opened her mouth to answer, then paused. She had rehearsed speeches about honor, territory, and survival. But faced with a direct question from a trusted officer, those speeches felt hollow. We're fighting because the Valkeen are our enemies, Zreen said weakly. Why are they our enemies? Nis asked. Zreen couldn't answer. The truth was, she didn't know. The war had started 3 generations before she was born. It had always just been reality. Thornid fought Valkeen. That's what they did. Commander Nis closed her eyes. I'm ordering my division to stand down. You can't. Zreen screamed. That's treason. That's cowardice. No, Chancellor, Nis said sadly. It's clarity. The humans didn't brainwash those soldiers in the medical facilities. They just gave them permission to ask questions we should have been asking all along. Within an hour, Nis's decision spread through the fleet like wildfire. Division after division began refusing orders. Not dramatically. Not with mutiny or violence. They simply stopped following commands to advance and attack. High Chancellor Zreen watched her authority collapse in real time. Desperate, she ordered loyal troops to arrest the commanders who had stood down. But even her loyal soldiers moved slowly, reluctantly. Nobody wanted to fight their own people. The Thornid Armada ground to a halt. 5 million soldiers sitting in space, refusing to move forward. On the Morning Star, Daewon let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. They stopped. Without us using the array at all, Hana said in wonder. Captain Wren shook his head. How did you know that would work? I didn't, Daewon admitted. But I knew that the worst thing we could do was prove we were just another military power. The only way to end warfare is to show there's a better option. Yuna was already preparing the next step. We need to open negotiations with Commander Nis. She's going to need support. The Thornid government will try to label her a traitor. She is a traitor, Jin pointed out. No, so Jin said, having joined them on the bridge. She's a soldier who finally got permission to be a person. That's not treason. That's evolution. Within days, the Thornid government fell. High Chancellor Zreen was removed from power by her own council, who were terrified of losing more armies. Commander Nis became a hero to millions of Thornid citizens who were tired of endless war. The Valkeen Empire, seeing what happened to the Thornids, quietly began peace negotiations. And in the medical facilities, Kelvor watched the news with his friend Rin. 7 million soldiers now, all in various stages of recovery. All learning to be themselves again. The galaxy is changing, Rin observed. Because of us, Kelvor said. Because we stopped fighting. 6 months after the contested zone incident, humanity faced a crisis of conscience. Ethicist Myung stood before the Earth Global Assembly, addressing billions watching across the planet. He was a thin man with graying hair, someone who had spent 40 years studying the philosophy of right and wrong. Now he was challenging his own species. We claim we freed minds, Myung said, his voice carrying across the chamber. But did we? Or did we simply replace one form of control with another? The Valkeen Empire controlled their soldiers through propaganda. We controlled them through targeted psychological warfare. How are we different? The question resonated. Protests that had been simmering for months erupted into major demonstrations. University students occupied buildings, demanding humanity stop using the silence array. Religious groups called it playing God. Parents worried that if humanity could change military minds, what else might they change? In the contested zone, psychologist So Jin worked with a patient who had once been a Thornid officer. His name was Rex and he was struggling. I remember my old life, Rex said quietly. I remember being certain, confident I knew my purpose. Now I don't know anything. Some days I think you humans saved me. Other days I think you destroyed who I was. So Jin nodded. She had heard similar concerns from hundreds of patients. Do you want to go back to being that person? Rex thought for a long time. No, he finally admitted. But I'm angry that I didn't get to choose. You chose for me. You're right, so Jin said simply. We did, and that wasn't fair. We made a decision about your mind without your permission. We believed we were saving lives, but we were also taking away your choice. Then why did you do it? Rex demanded. Because we thought ending the war was worth it, so Jin replied honestly. We thought saving billions of lives justified violating millions of minds. Maybe we were wrong. Maybe there should have been another way. But in that moment, with both armies about to kill each other, we made a choice. Rex looked at her for a long moment. At least you admit it? You don't pretend you're perfect. That conversation represented a shift. Humanity had begun acknowledging the moral complexity of what they had done. They weren't heroes. They weren't saviors. They were people who had made a difficult choice with enormous consequences. But the galaxy didn't care about humanity's guilt. 12 alien species had formed the coalition. They represented some of the most powerful civilizations in known space. Their united message was simple. Humanity was too dangerous to exist. The coalition's argument was compelling. If humans could rewrite minds to end wars, what else could they do? Could they change political opinions? Could they suppress dissent? Could they turn entire populations into mindless followers? Ambassador Thiel of the coalition addressed the Galactic Council. We don't question humanity's intentions, Thiel said carefully. But intentions don't matter when the power is absolute. Today they use this weapon to end wars. Tomorrow, who decides what else needs to be fixed? Who decides which thoughts are acceptable? The council listened. Many agreed. Fear spread like a virus. On Earth, military intelligence detected the coalition's fleet movements. They were preparing for a coordinated strike. Not just on human ships, but on Earth itself. They planned to remove the threat before humanity could spread further. Commander Daewon received the intelligence reports with a heavy heart. His officers expected him to activate the silence array, to stop the coalition the same way they had stopped the Valkeen and Thornid. Sir, we need to act, Captain Wren urged. They're coming to destroy us. We have to defend ourselves. The array won't work on them, Hana said, studying the data. They're not traumatized soldiers. They're terrified politicians and military leaders acting out of fear. The psychological profiles are completely different. Then we modify the array, Jin suggested. Target fear instead of trauma. Make them too afraid to attack. No, Daewon said firmly. Everyone turned to look at him. If we use the array on people who aren't soldiers, on people who are simply afraid of us, then we prove them right, Daewon continued. We prove that we're willing to change any mind that opposes us. We become exactly what they fear. Then what do? Wren demanded. Let them destroy us? We do something humanity has never been good at, Daewon replied. We tell the truth, all of it. Diplomat Yuna had been thinking the same thing. She approached the Galactic Council with a proposal. Humanity would broadcast their entire history to the galaxy. Everything. Every war, every genocide, every mistake. But also every moment of redemption, every peace treaty, every time humanity chose mercy over revenge. You want to show them how violent you are? Ambassador Krell asked incredulously. We want to show them how we changed, Yuna corrected. The silence array didn't come from nowhere. It came from centuries of humans studying war, trying to understand it, trying to end it. We made every possible mistake before we figured out a better way. The broadcast began. For 3 days, humanity transmitted their history to every corner of the galaxy. The world wars, the nuclear bombs, the genocides in Rwanda, Armenia, and Cambodia, the colonial atrocities, the slave trades. Humanity showed the worst of themselves first. Then they showed the healing, the Truth and Reconciliation Commissions, the war crime trials, the peace processes, the decades of research into trauma, psychology, and conflict resolution. They showed how humanity had learned to face their own darkness. Finally, they revealed the silence array's development, the ethical debates, the restrictions built into the system, the fact that it only worked on people already broken by military conditioning. They showed the limitations, the failures, and the ongoing questions about whether using it was right. We're not perfect, Yuna said in the final message. We're not saviors. We're just a species that suffered through thousands of years of war. and finally decided there had to be a better way. We made the silence array because we didn't want anyone else to suffer what we suffered. The galaxy watched, and slowly, something shifted. In the Coalition fleet, Ambassador Thiel watched the broadcast with growing understanding. She saw humanity's genocides and felt horror, but she also saw something her own species had never done. She saw humans admitting their mistakes, studying them, learning from them. Her own species had committed atrocities in their past. Most species had, but they buried those memories, denied them, or justified them. Humans put them on display and said, "We did this. We were wrong. We changed." Thiel called an emergency coalition meeting. "We need to reconsider. They're manipulating us with these broadcasts," another ambassador argued. "Are they?" Thiel asked. "Or are they trusting us with the truth? They just showed us every weapon they have, every limitation of their technology, every moral doubt they possess. That's not manipulation. That's vulnerability." The debate raged for hours. Some coalition members still wanted to attack. Others began to waver. The fleet held position, weapons charged, waiting for orders. On Earth, people watched the sky and waited. In the medical facilities, Kelvor also watched. The former Valkeen soldier had become an unexpected voice in galactic debates. When the Coalition broadcast their accusations against humanity, Kelvor requested to respond. He appeared before the Galactic Council without permission from any government. Just a soldier who wanted to speak. "I hated the humans for what they did to me," Kelvor said. "They took away my certainty, my purpose, my identity as a warrior. They left me confused and lost. I wanted to blame them for destroying who I was." He paused, looking at the assembled ambassadors. "But they didn't destroy me," Kelvor continued. "They removed the conditioning that had been controlling me since I was young. Everything I thought was me was actually programming from my military commanders. The humans didn't change who I was. They revealed who I had always been underneath the uniform." He gestured to the viewing screen behind him, showing the medical facilities where thousands of former soldiers lived together. "Look at us," Kelvor said. "Valkeen and Thornid, species that were enemies for a century. We're not fighting anymore. We're not killing anymore. We're talking, learning, building friendships. Is that brainwashing? Or is that what happens when you remove the propaganda that made us hate each other?" A coalition ambassador stood up. "But humanity took away your choice to fight. They forced you to change, did they?" Kelvor asked. "Or did they give me back the choice I never had? I was conscripted into the Valkeen military at age 15. I never chose to be a soldier. I never chose to fight. The humans didn't take my choice away. My own government did that decades ago. The humans just gave me permission to realize it." The chamber fell silent. Kelvor looked directly at Ambassador Thiel. "You're afraid of humanity because they can change minds. I understand that fear. But ask yourself, is the mind that can be changed so easily really free to begin with? Or is it already being controlled by someone else?" The Coalition fleet received new orders. They would not attack. Instead, they requested a diplomatic summit. On the Morning Star, Commander Daewon closed his eyes in relief. "We survived. By not fighting," Hana observed. "By being vulnerable instead of strong." "Maybe that's the real power," Sojin suggested. She had been listening from the medical bay. "Not the power to control minds, but the power to admit we're not sure we should." The galaxy had watched humanity face. 2 years after the contested zone incident, the galaxy looked completely different. Architect Sung Ho stood before the completed structure, feeling a mixture of pride and uncertainty. He had designed the first permanent rehabilitation center on a neutral world near the galactic core. It wasn't a prison. It wasn't a hospital. It was something new entirely. The building sprawled across 50 square kilometers with gardens, meditation spaces, workshop areas, and living quarters for 20,000 residents. Valkeen, Thornid, Human, and a dozen other species worked together on the design. They created spaces that respected different needs while encouraging interaction. "It's beautiful," said a voice behind him. Sung Ho turned to see Kelvor, the former Valkeen soldier who had become famous for his testimony. Kelvor now worked as an advocate, traveling the galaxy to speak about his experiences. "Will it work?" Sung Ho asked. "Can we really rehabilitate soldiers from any war, any species?" "It's working already," Kelvor replied, gesturing to the people moving through the gardens. Former soldiers from 3 different conflicts were learning to garden together. The question isn't whether we can, it's whether we should. That question still haunted humanity. The silence array had been used 3 more times in the past 2 years. Each time it ended wars that had killed billions. Each time humanity asked permission from the Galactic Council first. Each time they established rehabilitation centers for the affected soldiers afterward, but each use brought protests from Earth ethicist Myung-led demonstrations demanding that humanity stop using the technology entirely. We can't police the galaxy's wars, Myung argued. We're not saviors. We're not gods. Every time we use that array, we're deciding for others what they should think and feel. That's wrong no matter how many lives it saves. In a classroom on the frontier world of New Seoul, teacher Young Mi faced 30 students. Half were human. The others were children of former soldiers, Valkeen, Thornid, and other species. War orphans whose parents had died in conflicts or disappeared into military service. Young Mi taught them something radical: empathy. War happens when we stop seeing others as people, she explained to the class. When we call them enemies or aliens or threats, we forget they have families, dreams, fears just like us. My job is to make sure you never forget that. A young Valkeen student raised her hand. But what if someone is actually dangerous? What if they want to hurt us? Good question, Young Mi said. There are dangerous people. There are legitimate threats. But most wars don't happen because of actual threats. They happen because of fear, misunderstanding, and leaders who benefit from conflict. If we can teach you to ask questions, to seek understanding, to look for solutions beyond violence, then maybe your generation won't repeat our mistakes. The Returned, an organization founded by Kelvor and other rehabilitated soldiers, had become one of the most powerful peace movements in galactic history. They traveled to active war zones and spoke directly to soldiers, not ordering them to stop fighting, not using psychological warfare, just sharing their stories. A returned delegation arrived at a border dispute between 2 species that had been fighting for 20 years. The soldiers on both sides prepared for the usual diplomatic nonsense. Instead, they met veterans who had fought in wars just like theirs. I killed 47 people in the contested zone, a former Thornid soldier told them. I remember each one. I thought I was fighting for my homeworld's survival. Turns out I was fighting because my commander wanted a promotion, and the war was good for business. Those 47 people died for nothing. Their families grieved for nothing, and I lived with that every day. The active soldiers listened in silence. I'm not telling you to stop fighting, the veteran continued. I'm telling you to ask why you're fighting. Really ask. Because if you can't find a good answer, one day you'll be like me, alive but haunted by all the deaths that accomplished nothing. Many soldiers did ask, and when they asked, they often couldn't find good answers. Some conflicts did end, others didn't. But the questions changed things. Humanity's influence spread in unexpected ways. Criminal organizations briefly flourished, thinking humanity wouldn't use the silence array on non-military targets. They were wrong. When a pirate fleet kidnapped a colony ship with 10,000 civilians, humanity responded. But they didn't use the array to make the pirates stop. Instead, they used it to make the pirates understand what they were doing. Each pirate received a personalized experience showing them the terror of their victims. Not punishment, not torture, just empathy, forced empathy. They felt what their victims felt. Most pirates surrendered immediately. A few tried to continue their operations but found they couldn't. Every time they tried to threaten someone, they felt that person's fear as if it were their own. They literally couldn't harm people anymore without harming themselves. The ethical debates exploded again. Was that justice or mind control? Rehabilitation or brain alteration? Both, Sojin admitted in an interview. It's both. We're changing how criminals think, and that's terrifying. But we're not making them into different people. We're making them feel empathy they should have felt all along. Is that wrong? I don't know. But I know those 10,000 civilians are alive because of it. Not every problem could be solved with psychology. Some conflicts were about genuine resource scarcity, legitimate territorial disputes, or ideological differences too deep to reconcile. The silence array didn't work on everyone. Extremists with unshakable beliefs. Cultures where military service was genuinely voluntary and informed. Species fighting for survival against existential threats. In those cases, humanity offered mediation instead. They brought their centuries of conflict resolution experience, Sometimes it worked. Sometimes it didn't. Commander Daewon, now retired, gave his final interview to a galactic news service. He was 60 years old, gray-haired and tired. "Do you regret creating the silence array?" the interviewer asked. Daewon thought for a long time. "I regret that it was necessary. I regret that the galaxy was in such a state that psychological warfare seemed like the merciful option. But do I regret using it? No, billions of people are alive because we stopped those wars. But I do worry about the future. Why? Because humanity isn't going to be the only species with this technology forever," Daewon replied. "Eventually someone else will figure out how to target minds the way we do. And they might not use it the way we did. They might not establish rehabilitation centers or ask permission or struggle with the ethics. That's what keeps me awake at night." On the original battlefield in the contested zone, a memorial had been built. Not for the dead, remarkably few had died, but for the war itself. The memorial was a garden where former enemies planted trees together. Kelvor worked there often. He liked the physical labor. It gave him time to think. A young human visitor approached him. "Are you Kelvor? The famous one?" "Famous," Kelvor laughed. "I'm a former soldier who got his mind scrambled and learned to live with it." "But you helped end the war," the visitor insisted. "No," Kelvor said gently. "I helped people realize the war should end. There's a difference. The humans gave us the tools to see clearly, but we had to choose to use them." Former war coordinator Quillar worked at the same memorial garden. She had been one of the Thornid leaders during the war. Now she was a counselor helping other veterans adjust to peace. She approached Kelvor with a question that had been bothering her. "Do you think we're really free now? Or did the humans just trade one kind of control for another?" Kelvor pulled a weed from the soil before answering. "I think freedom is more complicated than we believed. When I was a soldier, I thought I was free because nobody was literally controlling my body, but my mind was full of propaganda, fear, and conditioning. Was that freedom? No," Quillar admitted. "Now my mind is clearer, but I carry the knowledge of what the humans did to me," Kelvor continued. "I question everything. I doubt my own thoughts sometimes. Is that freedom?" "I don't know," Quillar said. "Exactly," Kelvor smiled. "You don't know. I don't know. We're asking questions instead of accepting answers. Maybe that uncertainty is what freedom actually feels like." Across the galaxy, humanity's influence continued to spread, not through conquest or force, but through a simple, radical idea. What if we tried to understand each other instead of destroying each other? It didn't always work. Wars still happened. People still died. Some conflicts had no good solutions. But more and more species began asking themselves the questions humanity had learned to ask after millennia of warfare. Why are we fighting? What do we really want? Is this worth the cost? Could there be another way? Young Mai watched her students graduate. They were the first generation raised with mandatory empathy training. Some would become soldiers. Others would become leaders. A few would inevitably make mistakes, but they would make those mistakes while asking questions their parents never asked. "Do you think we're creating a better future?" her teaching assistant asked. "I think we're creating a different future," Young Mi replied. "Whether it's better depends on what happens next." On Earth, the protests continued. The debates raged. Humanity remained divided about their own power. Some wanted to use the silence array more aggressively. Others wanted to destroy it entirely. Most fell somewhere in between, uncomfortable,